It is a great pleasure to welcome Patty Flowers back for the second part of our docent tour of the Seattle Asian Art Museum. Patty was born in Evansville, Indiana, but after the Second World War, her family moved to Atlanta, Georgia, where she grew up. She attended Duke University, majoring in chemistry, but minoring in the Duke Players, the local drama group. She returned to Atlanta to teach, got married to a Georgia Tech man, and has two marvelous boys, Dave and Matthew. Patty taught high school chemistry and physics in Chattanooga and Atlanta, Georgia, retiring in 2004. In 2006, her sister, Susan Ruth, the Seattle Art Museum docent, inspired Patty to relocate to Seattle and also to apply to be a SAM docent. Since Patty was a born crafty one, enjoying all kinds of needlework, and a longtime teacher, she began docent life touring the Olympic Sculpture Park with children. Subsequently, she continued touring at the Asian Art Museum and the main Seattle Art Museum. Being a docent has been a wonderful and ongoing learning experience for her. Patty had just begun touring at the newly reopened Asian Art Museum when it closed due to COVID-19. So this is the second of two docent talks that she is doing for us in Horizon House. And in this one, she'll take us on a tour of the North Galleries of the Asian Art Museum that contain representations of a variety of aspects of life in several Asian companies. Please welcome Patty Flowers.
Thank you so much. I I really, and I forgot to thank you, Pam, for your introduction the last time as well. I really, really enjoyed it. It's a good one. I'm now trying to share my screen, and for some reason, there it goes. Okay, let's get it to slideshow. Come on, slideshow from beginning. Okay, there we are. We all set? Okay, I'm going to assume we are. The Asian Art Museum, what we now know as the Asian Art Museum, is this lovely, lovely building. And it was built in 1930. It's up in the Volunteer Park, which we'll see a little bit more of in a minute. But it was built, the money was given by these two people, Dr. Richard Fuller and his mother, Margaret McTavish Fuller. They were big collectors of art. Margaret McTavish Fuller would take her son when he was very young to Asia and to Europe for the Grand Tour, and they would be collecting things. And in the early 1900s, they were one of a few of prominent Seattle families that would collect art. And they all got together and shared their art with each other. But Dr. Fuller and his mother thought, it would be nice if we could share this with the people of Seattle. So they endowed this marvelous museum and they built it up in Volunteer Park. And this is Volunteer, this is what we now know as the Asian Art Museum. Back then, it was the only Seattle art museum. And if you'll look, it looks west. It's just a beautifully situated park and building. To orient you with a map, love maps, here is Lake Union. This is north is up there. So this is Lake Union. And here we are. If you look at home, because I'm home, this is my home too. So here is Horizon House. And where did my little thing go? This is the problem. We can see the Olympic Sculpture Park. I have lost oh, there it goes. That's the problem with using the pointer. And then this red, Asian Art Museum. So Volunteer Park is not that far away from us. It's only about a 10-minute drive. And you can see it is in the middle of this beautiful, beautiful park. And let me just say, Seattle Art Museum has 3 buildings. It has the downtown building, And for some reason, there we go, his downtown building, that is down around here, that I think most people are familiar with. Olympic Sculpture Park is right on the water, just down from the Space Needle. And then now this Asian Art Museum. As I said, this building was built in 1930. And in the 80s, it was pretty full, and it was deemed that we needed a new building. And that's when the downtown building was built. It was then decided that since we had such a large Asian collection, that our Asian collection would be dedicated to this building, and it would contain all of that. I want to point out, if you see this, this is glass. It's a beautiful glass, and it has lovely metal work there. You can't see through the glass that well because it was covered by an opaque film, and we'll see later that that has changed indeed. So I call this talk Reimagining the Seattle Asian Art Museum. Now, why do I do that? Well, in 2017, it was decided, well, it finally came around that the Asian Art Museum, this beautiful building, needed to be redone. There were many reasons it needed to have some more support. There were 4 main ones. One is they really needed to provide some climate control for the building. There was no climate control. Everything was as it had been done in 1930. And it was hard to get traveling exhibits in. They didn't want their art in this building. They needed to upgrade the seismic properties of it. I mean, it had been built in 1930. They wanted to enhance the accessibility of it. And they also needed to replace some lost space. They were going to redo the heating. They were going to redo the electricity. And they were going to have to replace some of the space that new things would take. So they closed it down in 2017. And they had to move all the art out of it. All the art. Now, this is the new footprint. The old footprint did not have this. And this was solid. But basically, they kept the same footprint. It's a historical building. These are all galleries. All had art in them. As many of us that love the Seattle Art Museum, the Asian Art Museum, know. So they had to take out all of this art, store it. Then the renovators came in. They had to do extensive renovation, much more than was expected. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. But then the art needed to come back in. Well, the problem was, what are you going to do with it? It used to be that galleries in Asian art museums would be set up by country. Okay, so this is China, and China, then we'd go chronologically. And you see the old things and the newer things and the new things. And then over here would be the Philippines, and there would be Japan. The curators decided they wanted to do something different with this. And so what they decided they would do is, rather than putting it by country and chronological order, they would mix it all together. The statement from Seattle Art Museum says each artwork tells its own story of when, where, and how it was made. But when seemingly disparate artworks are displayed together, meaningful connections and questions emerge. And so they decided to arrange it by theme. I was totally taken away when I saw this. And these are the themes of the different rooms. This is the South Side, and we talked about that last time. And the South Side is mainly arranged by they're spiritual things. The north end is materials. I like the specificity of it. Okay, but I think the curators had a really good time saying, well, how are we going to do this? And let me tell you what my goal for this talk is today, and last time too. I cannot tell you everything. What I hope to do is to pique your curiosity, is to show you a little bit of things that are in each gallery. And so hopefully when it reopens, you'll be able to go in there and be a little bit more familiar. So you will see even more different things, more different relationships. Okay, I'm going to start off in this garden court. Here's our garden court. And the garden court used to, these beautiful travertine walls used to be lined with all sorts of sculptures and statues. We talked about that last time. Most of them have been put into, remounted in the South. But this is the garden court as it stands now. It is beautiful. These beautiful travertine walls, and I'm giving you a little smile here. They've been cleaned. They're just gorgeous. It turns out they're not travertine. We were always told that. The only travertine is this first row with all the ductwork in it. This first row is travertine. The rest of these walls are actually concrete, and they're a faux travertine. They look just like the lower one, but we think it's because, or the remodelers think it's because it was to save energy. When they came in here, they took these down, and they found out they were very loosely connected to some clay tiles that were the structure of this particular, of these walls. So they did extensive restructuring of the walls. Now, let me show you something else. Same court, a little bit blurry, but this is what we saw last time, but we didn't see it from this view. This is the only, well, there's some other art, but this is a really marvelous piece of art in this terrace. It's called Gather, and it's LED lights. If you are an Instagram person, it might look like at whatever, the pound key. To me, it is very reminiscent of the ikat dyeing, the indigo dyeing of the Japanese. And as a matter of fact, the artist that was commissioned to do this, George Tsutakawa Chin, who is the grandson of George Tsutakawa, is not only interested in lighting, but he's also interested in fabric. All right, let's go into our gallery. And the first gallery we're going into is called Are We What We Wear? Well, you know I love this gallery because I love fabrics, and I also love beads. And we're going to see both of them here. This is a very beloved piece of the collection. It's a fireman's coat. And if I know it's a little blurry, but this is a rabbit. See the ears? And this is another rabbit. And he's got a mallet in his hand, and he's pounding rice into making rice cakes. So the very traditional thing. Japanese have a relationship with rabbits and the moon. They believe that instead of a man in the moon, there are rabbits in the moon. And a lot of times you will see on kimonos or something else, there are rabbits, and then there are moons as well. So it's a fireman's coat. This is actually the inside of the fireman's coat. It's very heavily quilted. It's cotton, heavily quilted. The firemen would wear them the other way, inside out of this. And the outside is very plain. And they'd soak it in water before they went into a fire. That was their protection from the fire. They had a hat, and they also had gloves on, and I'm sure pants. But this was their protection against the fire. But I love the rabbits and pounding the rice cakes. What we have over here is a beautiful Korean wedding dress. It's from the early 20th century. It's a silk gauze. One person that came through the museum when it was up before said that it's a very, he really thought it was a terrific outfit. And this would be just one of many different layers that the Korean bride would wear. This unusual, now there are many gorgeous kimonos like this one over here. It's just a gorgeous silk kimono. But this one is not really pretty, I didn't think, but it's very interesting. It's from an elm tree. This is elm tree bark. The dark bark, the tan color is actually from the bark of an elm tree that grows in Hokkaido in northern Japan. And this coat came from the 19th century. It's the Anu people that live up in Hokkaido. And see, I keep losing. There it goes. Right there is a patchwork. This patchwork, as you can probably guess, is cotton, and it's a dyed indigo. Okay, and of course, this is a lovely, lovely silk woman's kimono from the 20th century. Now, these are two almost life-size pictures that are in the room, and they came from a series of pictures that were displayed. It's a modern, I guess you can tell that. It's a modern Korean photographer called Jung Yang-do, and it's from 2001. The title of it is Bewitched, and the area of it is I am not always who I want to be. And he had many series of double pictures. First of all, he found someone who was in a job and interviewed them and said, well, what kind of a job would you like to do? And in this case, this is what the young lady wanted to be doing. And I love the way, you know, you can play games with this for a long time. Which of these things are like the others? Because the way he poses them so well. Okay, I had to do a couple of beads. So what we have now is these three things are all from a woman's outfit. We have a headdress, we have a dress, and we have a train. And they all are made out, it's from Malaysia, Borneo Island. It's the island people. And the beads are made up of carnelian, glass, stone, shell, brass, and beads. So just very intricate. Can you imagine a whole dress made out of beads? Of course, I've got some more jewelry. We've got here a dowry bracelet from 11th century Iran. It's gold and it's sculpted and it has birds and cones on it. Again, I keep losing there we go. It has birds and then it has cones. And inside it has an engraving in Arabic. It says wishing for happiness and contentment. So it was a wedding. Now we have two beautiful filigree earrings, beautiful metal work. And they also are from Iran and they are gold. And in our corner, it is jade. It's nephrite. Jade comes in nephrite and jadeite. And this is nephrite. It's from China. It's from the 11th century. And it actually is a phoenix. So this would be a headpiece that the person would wear in their hair. Okay, now these are 4 shots, and I've got a couple of other shots too. Each of these is fairly small. It's called an inro. And what this is a wooden box, probably is covered with lacquer and gold. They all have different designs. And if you notice, they have a string that goes through a bead. When the bead is pulled up, this portion will open up. And what they were used for was by the Japanese men, and they would keep things in them. Now, I never really realized how they work. And they also have a little thing at the end. And what the Japanese men would do is they would put this, they had a sash on their kimono, and they would hang this on their sash. They would put the bead part behind the sash, and then this, the netsuke, and we'll see some more netskis, would go in front. So it would just sort of hang on the sash. But how they worked, as I said, I've always been fascinated by, well, how did this all work? In Spain, I happened to go to an Asian art museum, of course, and they had a whole collection of these inros. And what you see is here, it's able to open up, and there are little drawers in there that they could keep tobacco, or they could keep messages, or they could keep things in. Here's another one. It just opens up, and there are drawers in there. And I think I've got another one too. So here are some, I was fascinated. And these are little netskis, and they are carved out of wood. Sometimes they're carved out of ivory. We are going to see more of those later. Okay, so we've sort of covered Are We What We Wear? And we're going to go through this door right now, and we're going to go into the room called Color and Clay. Let me just say, when they remodeled this museum over the last couple of years, they took down all the walls except for this wall on this side. And the reason why is the room is so lovely. That is just gorgeous. They didn't want to mess with it. So this side of the wall was kept. The other side of the wall was taken down and resupported. It says color and clay. Now, I'm not going to spend a lot of time explaining, because actually there is no explanation in this room. Well, there's one spot, but if you'll notice, the entire room is one big display. These are windows looking out the back of the museum into the park. But this entire thing is just, it's pieces of pottery. So you can walk all around it. You can see the pottery from the front. You can see the pottery from the back. Is it done by country? No. Is it done by age? No. It's just put together by different collections. The curators had a great time putting it together. Now, if you're very interested in finding out specifically about the age of things or about the materials of the pottery, you could spend all day with pottery. There is a digital touch display that you can look things up, and it gives you information about them. But the curators just wanted you to see the things juxtaposed with each other. So let me just say some of the things they have. They have the blue and white china, the blue and white porcelain. And of course, we call it china. We call what we use china because the original inventors of porcelain, or discoverers, perhaps, came from China. They had the right kind of clay. They had their kilns in the right spots, and they were able to come up with this marvelous thing. The blue, when you see the blue and white, is probably cobalt from Persia, which is where they got that. Some of the things are very intricate. Some are very simple. Here is a lovely moon jar. It's A lovely, simple moon jar with just white glaze on it. This is a plate, lovely plate, and the glaze in here has enamels on it. So there are lots of different ways that you can decorate this beautiful pottery. And then we have a very simple cup, Japanese, very much treasure the mark of the potter. And it's very simple and not highly decorated. Three more things. I've always loved this. This is called an oxblood glaze. Looks like it, doesn't it? And this is a green glaze. Sometimes the same glaze will turn different colors depending on the heat and the conditions in the kiln. And here we have a very standard Chinese. It's a 3-colored glaze, has brown and has that dark and then has the light. Okay, well, you could spend all day in that, but we're not going to. We're going into writing, images, painting, poems. This is a very important room. And it's important because I learned when I first started touring here, the highest form of art in China, in Japan, is calligraphy. And I was really taken aback by that. And I thought, why in the world, they're just writing letters. Why is that the highest point? And the answer is that when you do calligraphy and you do it with a brush, it's like doing painting a picture. It's also you're writing a poem. It takes most people, up to 10 years to learn how to accurately make the letters or the images in the calligraphy. So it's a very high form of art. This is what the room looks like. This is a man and he's standing over, there's a scroll, and we're going to come back to that scroll. It's a very important scrolls. Chinese, Japanese, sometimes their scrolls are horizontal, side to side. This particular one, this piece of one is 35 feet long. Sometimes they hang on the walls and they're vertical scrolls. Well, we'll come back to that scroll. But I want you to look at this. This is probably painting, might be a piece of a horizontal scroll. I think it's the one that's supposed to be there. It's called A Branch of the Cold Season. It's from China, the mid 15th century. It's the cold season because it's a plum. And a plum is a resilient recluse that blooms during winter under adverse conditions of ice and snow. So a symbol of winter is the plum tree. There were two people that worked on this, Yang Hu with Mark Zhen, and it's from China in the mid 15th century. It was actually a farewell gift for Yang's friend, Hong Chen, who was departing to take the notoriously difficult civil service examination. If you pass the civil service examination, you were there for life. So he painted this as a beautiful painting. And then his friend wrote the poem, top to bottom, right to left, and with beautiful, beautiful calligraphy. We have some red stamps here that sometimes designate the artist. Sometimes it designates who actually got it, the different types of things. All right, now, how do you write that? If you're going to do writing, if you're going to sit at your desk and you're going to do poetry or calligraphy, how are you going to do it? Well, you might do it with a writing box. This particular box is wood, started out as wood, and then it was covered with lacquer. And we're going to talk more about the lacquer later, because it's a big part of what is in the museum and what is valued by the Asians, but it's covered with lacquer, which is, it comes from a tree. It's the sap from a tree. And they put it on the wood, they let it dry, and then they sand it down. Then they put another coat on. This particular one has some things, some gold on it. Sometimes they will blow bronze powder on it and give it some sort of a shine and a design. So what's inside this writing box? Well, we have a little well for water. We have our brushes, and they are just like brushes. We have a stone, a very smooth stone. And then we also have this. And this is a piece of very finely ground up and then molded, usually ash or it's like charcoal. And you make your own ink. So you take this stick and you rub it with water. You put some water in and you rub it until the ink gets to be the color that you want. And then you will paint with it. Let's see, when is that from? It's, oh, I don't have the one that's from. Okay, that's all right. We'll go to the next one. Okay, so what was this guy looking at? One of the most beloved things. It's called the deer scroll. It's a picture of deer, and these are several sections of it. The original deer scroll was 75 feet long. 75 or 70? 70 feet long. We have half of it. The other is scattered here and about, but we have half of it. And it's just very beloved. It's lovely, graceful. These are different parts. Since the part we have is 35 feet long, they show different segments of it at different times. And I was clever enough to find a couple of different sections from stealing from what other people had done or borrowing. So here are the deer. This is one section. Here's the calligraphy, writing the poem. Here again is a whole group of deer. And here we have some more. They're drinking water in a lake, it looks like. And there is our calligraphy. So usually one person does the art and the other person does the calligraphy. Here, just a few deer. And then here are some right there. And here is, I think this is the part of it that I have seen the most. The calligrapher was Quetsu and the painter was Tatsu. Deer are a sign of autumn. Deer are also messengers of the gods in the Shinto mythology. So this, and it's just beloved by everybody at the Asian Art Museum. All righty, so we've gone through here. We're going to do picturing nature, and I've just got a few things. It has quite a few things because, of course, Chinese, Japanese, they love to, the literati love to examine, think of themselves as being in the mountains. And so they write about being in the mountains and they write about the simple things. But in here are some of my favorite. I told you we get back to the Netskis. Now, these are probably at the most 2 inches. They're 1 or 2 inches. They're little cards. They were the things that were at the end of the in row, that little box. And they're collected for themselves mostly. Here we have a cow and her calf. All of them are ivory except for the elephant. The elephant is wood. Love the dog scratching. 3 puppies. And here is the hare with the amber eyes. There was a book written about Netski and the hare with the amber eyes. Now these would all have a hole through the middle because they were at the end of the inro that the Japanese men used to carry things. Okay, this is also a very beloved piece of art in the Asian Art Museum. It's a herder, it's a buffalo, and with a herder. And it's a part, it was on a fan. It's silk, late 12th century in China. And also, it has meaning in that the Buddhists believed that if you did trivial daily chores, you got closer to Buddha's nature. So that's one reason you will see a lot of very simple chores. This is getting you closer to Buddha's nature. Okay, so now we go into what is precious. What is precious? Well, oh my gosh, what do you mean, what is precious? I mean, what do you consider precious? Some people consider precious things as being, if it's rare or if it's exquisite, if it's expensive. But for some people, and I think a lot of us here at Horizon House, if you don't have a lot of room to keep things, the things that are precious to you are the things that have meaning to you. So it's interesting how your ideas of what is precious changes. This gallery shares the worldly possessions of powerful and wealthy people from Asia's past. Some have sumptuous materials or exquisite craftsmen, but again, some are just have meaning. This was a very unusual one of the first times I've ever seen one of these. It's actually an elephant goad. It probably was meant to be ceremonial. It was not meant to be used because it actually is made of rock crystal. These are sections of rock crystal, and they're separated by it was made in the 17th century. They're separated by steel with gilding, with gold, and copper with gilding. Elephants were the prerogative of the king, only the elephants. It's from India, and it's also called an Ankush. Now, also from India, there's some marvelous daggers. This dagger is rock crystal and steel. Gold, of course, got to be precious. This one is jade, and it's inlaid with steel. Oh, the steel is the blade. It's gold, rubies, emeralds. The sheath is gold and velvet and wood. So the Indians, marvelous. They have a lot of marvelous inlaid things. In India, actually, the size of the gemstone, rather than its clarity, determine its value, or that's the way it used to be. Now, this particular, it doesn't look like the other daggers. It's called a push dagger, and it is, it's also called a katar. It's 18th, 19th century, steel with overlaid gold. And if you look in the handles where you would actually push it into someone, it has rubies, emeralds set in gold. If you saw the last exhibit from India downtown, there were a lot of these. And if you see the pictures, the Mughal pictures, a lot of times you will see these daggers stuck in. It was very stuck into the sashes of the courtiers. It's very common to see that once you, or to find it once you want to look at it. Here we have a circular box, 19th century, from Tibet. And it's probably about 6 inches across, which is kind of large for this box. It is silver, gold, red velvet, garnets, turquoise, pearls, glass, rock crystal, and semi-precious stones, all inlaid into that box. These are two views of a beautiful, beautiful nephrite. It's white nephrite. That's jade. It's 18th century China, 18th century India, excuse me. Inlaid with gold, enamel, jadeite, agate, and emerald. So it's probably from about the 1700s. Oops, I've got to go back to these bracelets. These bracelets are marvelous. It looks fairly simple from here. It's from China in the 19th century. It's grayish white nephrite. Again, we're talking about jade. Each piece is carved from a single piece of jade. And now jade is one of the hardest materials to carve, just starting off with that. Each strand is continuous and separate from the other strand. So we're talking about, this was once a solid piece of jade. Then they went in and they carved. So it's two strands intertwined, but each of the strands is separate. So they had to do that carving. Just amazing craftsmanship. Okay, we've got lovely. I said we come back to lacquer. These are 2 lacquer plates. And they're just, I said beautiful last time. They're lovely. It starts with a piece of wood, and the wood is coated with this sap from the lacquer tree. Very thin coating, sanded down, let it dry, and then they smooth it. Then they do another one. Both of these probably have some cinnabar mixed with the lacquer, which gives it some color. And then this one, I mean, they put enough very thin coat on that they could carve into it. Lacquer is very much prized. And here is another lacquer piece. And it's a cosmetic box. Started with wood, covered with lacquer, and then what was blown on the outside is bronze, specks of bronze, specks of gold. It's a cosmetic box. And the Urashima fisherman, this tells a story of a fisherman. Here's the fisherman on an island. And this fisherman was fishing and he caught a turtle and he released the turtle. And when he released the turtle turned into this beautiful princess. The princess took him to the underwater world, and where he lived for about 3 days, marvelous. But he wanted to go back up to Earth. When he went back up to Earth, he discovered that 300 years had passed. So this story illustrates longevity. And here is the turtle, by the way. And the turtle has this magic castle on it. So this is the fisherman Urashima. We have an Indian Jahangir, one of the Mughals. And of course, the falcon is very, very important to the Indians. And we have these 2 coins, gold coins. This Jahangir, a very handsome man. And here it is a lion. Last thing we have, yes, is this beautiful moon jar. Doesn't look very exciting. No inlaid work, nothing like that. But it's it's a Korean piece. It's a 2007. It's not an old piece, by Park Yong-suk. And it's porcelain with a clear glaze on it. These types of jars, it's called a moon jar for obvious reasons. These types of jars were favored by the court in the 14th century to the early 19th century. They stood for purity, honesty, modesty, which are all Confucian values. Okay, so we've sort of gone through these. We skipped some, I know. And now we're going to go into the foyer. And I just wanted to show you how beautiful this foyer is now when you come into the museum or leave. Since they've taken down all the opaque film on this glass, you can see all the work on it. And let me say too, these beautiful columns here were completely taken down. They took the pieces off, the green pieces off, labeled them so they could put them back up in the right order. And they found underneath the support was just terrible. And that's what they found out about the walls too, by the way. They said that they were amazed that the museum had stayed together through all of the earthquakes and things. They were very pleased it had. But we've got one last place to visit, and we're going to go downstairs. There is a room down, well, there's an art room downstairs, there's a meeting room downstairs, but there's also this brand new room where they can work on, I cannot think of the name of it, where they can work on the on art. It's a restoration room. It's going to be one of the premier rooms, places to get restoration done on the coast, on the West Coast. And you can actually see that. I mean, they have windows. You can see them working on the various pieces. Here they have rooms. They have these lights that pull down. It's really a very interesting thing. And they're probably working in there now because of COVID. We can't have us in there, but maybe there are not that many of them in there. So this is just a picture of somebody doing some calligraphy. So hopefully this will make you more familiar when you go to the Asian Art Museum, and you can explore a lot more. There's so much to explore. It's just lovely. So that's it.
Thank you, Patty. That was, even though I did have the opportunity to go to the renovated reimagined museum as it opened, I learned so much every time I hear you talk. So I'm wondering if others who are viewing it now, if you have some questions for Patty.
I did.
Oh, go ahead, John.
Okay. I did have a question on the deer scroll.
Yeah.
The different sections have different poems on them, right? So it's sort of like a poetry anthology, the whole scroll would be?
I think it all is one main theme as it goes through. And I do not know what the poems are. Mary, do you have any idea?
I don't, but I agree that it's all one main theme. Yeah, but I don't know what the poetry is. Yeah,
I don't either. I thought it was interesting though when I was reading about it. The poet, the calligrapher, they said would start with a full brush. Each line of calligraphy, he'd start with a full brush, and he'd use that same brush for that particular line of calligraphy. So if you look at it closely, you can see it gets kind of starts at the dark at the top and it gets a little lighter at the bottom. I think that was just one thing he wanted to do.
Patty?
Yeah.
I was wondering if the rabbit is a symbol for something like good luck, or the firemen would probably need good luck.
Absolutely.
So does it symbolize anything like that?
I'm not sure. Mary, I'll go back to Mary again.
I don't know.
Okay. Because Mary's stored up there too. I just know that it's a very prevalent theme, is those rabbits and the moon. But we could look that up. That's a good question.
It is a good question. Patty,
I have a question. Sorry, Mary. Go ahead.
And I'd had my notes out from your South Gallery tour. That was a spiritual journey. And then I noticed, and I haven't been in this gallery, but in the North Gallery, there's the Fashioning Eternity. And I wondered why, the reasons why it was put off by itself and not part of the spiritual journey in the South Gallery.
I have no idea.
And what?
I don't know.
Okay. And what is there that would make it part of the eternity?
They talk a lot about the tombs and the things that were found in the tombs. And
Okay.
you remember the warriors that were guarding the tombs, the 5 warriors?
Yeah, the
They're
honey.
there.
Yeah.
They're
Okay. Okay. So they're sort of like spiritual journeys, helping with the spiritual journey.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And the things that you would find from the tombs would
Yeah.
be helping with the spiritual journey.
Right. Okay.
So, I think the whole thing was kind of, oh, why don't we do it this way? We can put that over there.
We have an extra corner down here. Okay. Yeah.
I think they had a good time figuring out what to, and of course, what's up there now is only 4% of what we've got. So it's going to change over the years, which will be fun.
Yeah.
Patty, I was wondering, well, Mary and you are saying that these antiquities were found in tombs, but I was going to ask you, where were some of these found? Were they found buried in places, or probably more places than tombs?
Most of the things we found were not from tombs. The things that were found from tombs were things that were buried with the people. And I really didn't show any of those today. I can't think of any of the things that I showed today that came from tombs. They were things that were handed from person to person or whatever, or given to somebody. But when you look at the bronzes, which I did leave out, a lot of bronzes and things were buried in tombs, depending on how rich the person was that died. And those have been upended, but mainly they are in that room about eternity. Everything else was just sort of handed, like the scroll that they made for a friend that was going to take the examination.
I see. It's just startling to me how gorgeous they are, and they're centuries old.
Yes, I definitely agree. And oh, so much more textile when I think of all the textiles that they have. Oh, and I forgot to say something. I was talking with a neighbor of mine, and she said, well, you know what? I went to the original opening of the Seattle Art Museum back in 1930. Barbara Dean did. She said, and she said she can remember, her mother took her. She was 5 years old. And I went, that's just marvelous. She said, I could tell you guys. And that she said they used to be able to go down. There's a large storage area in the bottom of the museum. And I mean, they have cabinets and cabinets of stuff and boxes wrapped with tissue paper, kimonos and tissue paper that I was fortunate enough to go to one time. And she said, oh, we went down there all the time. Amazing.
Wow. Patty, I was particularly, I mean, everything was fascinating, but I was particularly interested in the beaded headpiece and those things from Borneo. We had the good fortune to be there in Malaysian Borneo probably 15 years ago. And I have a necklace that was made of white and black beads that just, it has stylized figures of people. And so that craft is still going on. It's sold to tourists these days. But it was just exquisite beading. And then right next to it was something that wasn't for sale, which was a baby carrier in multiple colors. Just, oh my goodness, just absolutely exquisite.
Beading is so interesting when you think of the Native Americans. You know, they all did beading. You find beads all over the place. So Pam, sometimes you need to show me that necklace.
I will. I do. I wear it occasionally when there are actual occasions to do something besides wear your jeans and sweatshirt around here.
Well, thank you very much, Patty. This was another fascinating tour. And now it seems, I feel like we've gotten a sense of the whole museum. So thank you.
You bet. You bet. I'm glad to share my love of it with you guys.
That's
The
Patty.
time.
very obvious. Thank you.
Thank you, Patty.
Okay, good. I'm going to spend a few seconds sharing my own screen just to talk about, not to talk about, but to show what's coming up. So, and then I'll close this down. Thank you all for coming.